Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Really quickly, I did want to talk the college football playoff rankings. I'll be honest, I don't think that there was a huge, crazy takeaway from it. The top 7 teams have remained the same from last week. So if you do not know what those rankings are, very simply, Alabama's number 1, Notre Dame is number 2, Clemson is number 3, Ohio State 4, Texas A&M 5, Florida 6, Cincinnati 7. And there's really not much to say, right? There's really not much to say. I can't get super fired up about the rankings. And what you need to know is this. What you need to know is the fly in the ointment. So the fly in the ointment is 2 things, right? So I get asked all the time, well, what has to happen for this team to get in, that team to get in, this team to get in? What I'll tell you is this. First of all, I think at this point, Alabama is just about in. Texas A&M and Georgia are both currently ranked in the top 10 of this poll. Alabama beat one of them by 28 and one of them by 17. And so even in theory, if they were to lose to Florida in the SEC championship game, I still think they would be in. But let's assume Alabama wins, and then let's assume Clemson beats Notre Dame. I think those 3 teams are pretty much locked in, right? You can make the case, certainly, first of all, if Clemson loses, they're out. I don't think they get in with 2 losses unless some other crazy stuff happens. But if Clemson wins, if Notre Dame loses, and it's not an embarrassing loss, I do think that it will be Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson. And I do think Ohio State has the inside track for that 4th spot, but it comes back down to what I talked about on last episode. Are they going to be able to get in enough games to qualify, to really put themselves in a position to, one, just make the Big Ten championship game? If one of their last 2 games is canceled, they will not be eligible for the Big Ten championship game because they need 6 regular season games to get in. Right now, they've only played 4 with 2 left. So if one of them gets canceled, there's the possibility that they don't even get into the Big Ten championship game, let alone the playoff. But as far as the playoff picture is concerned, what I would just say is very quickly this. The 3 big X factors are, first of all, this. If Florida upsets Alabama, then that creates chaos, right? Because if Florida upsets Alabama, then Florida's got a good resume, Alabama's got a good resume, and then assuming Notre Dame loses to Clemson, Clemson and Notre Dame are both sitting there at 10-1. Alabama and Florida are both sitting there at 10-1. And all of a sudden, Ohio State probably would be on the outside looking in at that point. So the first kind of fly in the ointment, assuming nothing crazy happens, by the way. And by the way, I'm all over the place. I apologize. But assuming nothing crazy happens, we're not talking about, Florida losing to Tennessee this weekend. If everybody takes care of what they're supposed to in the regular season, the big flies in the ointment are if Florida loses to Alabama or Florida beats Alabama. 2, if Notre Dame gets crushed by Clemson, because to me that is an X factor. I think if it's close, I think both will get in. I think everybody understands that Notre Dame had a good win against Clemson, even if Trevor Lawrence wasn't in that first game. But if Clemson in the ACC championship game beats Notre Dame 42-3, then all of a sudden we'll say, well, was that win that good or was because Trevor Lawrence wasn't there? So that's 2. If Florida upsets Alabama, that throws a wrinkle in everything. If Clemson crushes Notre Dame, that throws a wrinkle in everything. And then I think the third thing is, does Ohio State get in enough games? And even if they do they look good in them? Because I think that's one of the things that nobody's talking about. Is Ohio State, which I've talked about, because it's what I do. I'm AT, hoodie AT, that's what I do. Ohio State has some real holes. First of all, they've only played 4 games. The secondary's gotten torn up in a couple of those games, gave up almost 500 yards passing to Indiana a few weeks ago, gave up a bunch of yards passing to Penn State. They've struggled in pass protection. Indiana got all sorts of pressure on them. And so to me, that's the interesting thing about Ohio State as well, right? Now, assuming this season plays out, they will get to the Big Ten championship game. But even if they get there, they're going to play a Northwestern team which isn't very good and isn't very dynamic. I think Northwestern plays real defense. I don't know about their offense. But I only bring it up to very simply say, you look at Ohio State, their resume is not going to be overwhelming. And so what Ohio State needs is to absolutely make sure that Alabama beats Florida. And then I think what they would also hope for is that Notre Dame beats Clemson, and that, of course, Ohio State takes care of things. Even if Notre Dame loses to Clemson, if Alabama wins, they get in. Texas A&M needs help. They either need Ohio State to lose, they need Notre Dame to beat Clemson for a second time. A lot of Texas A&M fans listen to the show. I love you guys. I'm not saying it can't happen. I am saying you're